there, and I'm in the middle of the day here, and I'm kind of jealous.
This is tea.
Oh, okay. That
No,
sounds nice.
it's British maybe in that sense, but it's not a cold one.
All right. Okay.
Where are you, Derek?
Based in Houston. So, yeah.
Are you guys doing well in the World Series?
We are, yeah. We just clean swept the Yankees, so that felt very good, and off to the World Series, yeah.
Seattle Mariners just fell victim. That's our team, right? Not that I watch baseball. But...
Yeah.
Can I just ask, why is it called the World Series? It's just America, right, playing it.
That is
no, you're...
because when you live here, Philip, America is the world.
Yeah,
I'm gonna disagree.
no, not when
As
you
a
here.
As a history teacher, I'm gonna disagree.
But it was the whole world.
To be clear, I'm neither. I'm not American. I'm Canadian, but I'm of British descent, and so you nobody ever hears an accent on me. Occasionally, you hear something Canadian come out of my mouth, but the Toronto Blue Jays made it to the World Series years ago, and that was a big deal. So there is actually a second country that plays, but Canada's representation there is pretty poor.
Japan. But it is at the end of the day, it is just pure American arrogance, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if you go back in, the 1950s, I would say, I mean, really, it was only one country that really set the whole game. So I can understand where it came from. And I mean, we're all home-centric. So it's quite understandable. I mean, just look at ASCII and all the standards that goes on. It's, it was like a long time before we could even use Swedish. We have 3 extra characters, right? And that was still is a hassle. We still have to, it's like, we need to special handle that in JavaScript because you can't use that in JavaScript. So, I mean, history is, you said, Philip, history says that the world is bigger, but a lot of computing stuff. So, I mean, it's
practice says it's small. So.
Mm-hmm. So I think the only fascinating thing with, not the only, but one fascinating thing is that the U.S. has set so many standards in this world. I mean, all of them almost, you could say. But what happened to inches? Like, because there the U.S. is the only country on the planet, or maybe Liberia also, that uses inch. So that's really odd. But I mean, I understand that, why switch in daily talk. And I guess the switch is coming. But it's kind of an interesting thing that the U.S. has really been able to, set everything up, basically. But then for some odd reason, the rest of the world just decided against inches.
The imperial system is a real pain for me as an engineer working in the oil industry, particularly because the oil industry is very much attached to the imperial system. We're talking about barrels rather than meters cubed, and standard cubic feet rather than, again, meters cubed. And it is a complete pain when it comes to having to use different constants to a lot of other people to for your unit system. It's unpleasant.
But for ordinary things, I mean, we still talk about, I don't know what it is in centimeters, my monitor. Of course, it's inches. So, right? Monitor. So, I mean, in ordinary daily stuff, it doesn't really matter much. But I guess in engineering, it's, and I mean, space probes have crashed because of that. So,
apparently so, yeah.
So modern American cars are all bolted together with metric fasteners, just so you know.
Yeah, I know, and then it must be. I'm just, it was just a reference to the thing that the U.S. hasn't set the global standard for, in reference to Phillips, like what is the world? Because I would say that in most things, except inches, maybe, the U.S. has set the world standard wherever you look. But when it comes to metric system,
I think there's something to learn from this, and that's if something works, it's really, really hard to change it. Even if it doesn't work very well, it still works. So then it's really hard to change. And we notice this when doing change management at clients. As soon as they get that Excel up and running and being able to produce that a bit faster than a good enterprise grade information system, it's really hard to get them to let it go, even if it's not at all as good. So it's important to be fast and thorough with the changes so I think it's the metric guys that were too late.
Yeah.
So there's a business author named Jim Collins. He wrote a couple of good books, and a phrase that he uses, which I love, is "good is the enemy of great."
Yeah, that's really true, because as soon as it's good, you turn your attention to other really crappy things. But
Yeah.
that's probably fair, but then you won't ever get to great. All right, let's get started, maybe. I'm going to share my screen to... So one thing that I thought that we should talk about today, let's see if this... share. Is an annoying thing that I've heard from a lot and noticed myself as well, and it's the thing with link objects. Once you have them, you often want to add the other end, and once you have add the other end, you would really need to reach the link object that corresponds to that other end, and that has always been a hassle. Let me explain a bit what I mean. So if we were to do a simple model with a many-to-many link like this, do everybody see okay, or should I zoom or something? So this is the link class, and we do attach that to the association like that. And the first thing that we should probably mention once we're here is the ability to set the inner link names, because from class 1 you can go to this one, and if we were to guess what that was called, it would be this is the link class, but that's not always the case. Let's see if we select this, let's see, maybe I should select the association. Then I see that there's one association end called class 1, so that's this one going that way, and there's another one called class 2s, that one. But we also have the link role name. So that's the name to go from. If we select this, we get a information down here, link role name, the name to navigate to the link class. So if we are on class 2 and the ability to go to class 1s, we sometimes want to go to this one, and we can give it a specific name here. So that's a good thing, because the default names aren't that intuitive. I'm going to save this so that we can start the debugger.
And that would also then be a multi-link.
Yeah, so there will be many of these possibly. If I just put on XML and start the debugger, and if I were to have a class 1 and bring up a seeker for that and create a new class 1 and bring up that auto form, I have the association to class 2s, and the other one is called this is the link class. But that's sort of a name of a single one, but it's a multi-link. So it has just taken the name of the class because it didn't know any better. What we want to do is to get a better name for this.
So that link class can have its own attributes and operations and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so that's just a normal class, and what separates a link class from other classes are really only the lifetime control. So it's created automatically whenever we add a class 2 in the class 2 ends, or when we add a class 1 in the class 1 ends, and then the corresponding object is created for us. And
Is this part of standard UML? It doesn't
Yes.
look familiar.
yes,
Is it part of ECO3? Because it doesn't look familiar.
so could be that it's very much a part of the standard. And what I mean with lifetime control is that if you were to remove one of the class 1s from this association, the corresponding link classes, link objects would also disappear,
Of course.
automatically. So being here on class, we were here first, class 1s in that direction, the inner link name or the link role name. So we have two names. The name to navigate to the link class. Let's give that a name first. What should we call this? And we want something sounding like a plural, but maybe I gave it a crappy name.
The link classes?
Yeah, the link classes.
When you
The
say
object would actually be
link classes to class 1,
Sorry, say again.
wouldn't you say link classes to class 1?
Yeah, absolutely. That would be fair if we had many, like many-to-many, the link classes for class 1, maybe. So that's the link role name going from here to here. Then there's a possibility to give this a name as well. And that's the inner link name. So it sets down here the name to navigate onwards to target from the link class. But that usually gets a okay name. Or maybe it doesn't, it gets the plural. Let's see. I'm gonna save this. I'm gonna head over to the debugger. I'm gonna reread the model and bring up the seeker again. Yeah, now I have a class, let's see, I should have a class 2 because that was the one that we actually changed. Create a new class 2. So now it's called the link classes for class 1. And that points to an object or objects of class, this is the link class. And the original link is, or the multi-link name is class 1s. If I go into this link role, there's no add buttons because lifetime control is not owned by this end. Instead, there's a If I go into the class 1s, there's an add new button, so I can add a new class 1 for this. But what happened when I did that was actually that this link object also was created. And if I were to remove this, that would also disappear. So let's add one. And if I click this open, it's a link. It's of type, this is the link class, and it has two single ends. One that is called class 1s, but it's a single end, and one is that is called class 2s, but that's also a single end. So that might be confusing. So that would probably be a good thing to change the inner link role names. So that's the name from here and there. So standing on selecting the association, first attacking this end here, I set the link role name. Now I want to set the inner link role name to class 1. So now I've done this way. I probably also want to do that way. So then I would stand on the class 2 ends of this one and head back to the link role name, which is the name to navigate to the link class. So then we call that link. Something like that. Well, it's wrong to say classes because it's objects, the link objects. So that's the link role name, and then we say the inner link name, which is the name to navigate onwards to target from link class. So onwards to target from link class, doink doink. So that's the name to class 2. So let's call that class 2. And having done that, we head back to debugger and reread the model. And if we bring up the seeker for class 2 again and search on that, so we have one class 2. This one has one association, class 1s, as before. That's the whole way through past the link object, and this one is the link classes for class 1 as before. If I go here and add a new one, I can check that I got a new one here as well. If I go to the link object, I see that this one is called class 1 onwards to class 1, and that one is called class 2 onwards to class 2. So that's easy to get to. Yeah, that's back to myself. Good.
Yeah, I use association classes a great deal, and I guess I've just gotten used to the naming convention and the plurals when they're actually single and stuff like that. I never even knew that you could do this.
So this is something that became apparent that it's a good thing to be able to set the precision names on the not so visible associations, because they are implicit and there's no real way to where to write it. We also had a hell of a time initially to actually think out the terminology, how to name these things, but I think we're fine with what we call them now, the link role name, so to the link role, and the inner link name towards no, I said it wrong way. The inner, from the inner one towards the end.
Yeah, I mean, association class role name is kind of long, so yeah.
Yeah, so good. Now we have set the scene for the actual problem that we encounter on a almost daily basis. Not daily maybe, but let's say that we take one of the class 1s that we have. I'm gonna take the first one. So we have this one, and we want to add a that was something completely different. I'm gonna get everything back on screen. So so take the first class 1, and then I have the association and to class 2s. Let's bring up the editor here. So I have the possibility to add a class 2, and I'm gonna do that by creating a new class 2. Yeah, I also have to say add like that. And what happens when I run that is that I probably get another class 2 here, so I can run it several times. And the result here are different class 2s that probably point back to me as the first class 1 in this link. Yeah, they only have one. And if I were to go to that class 1, I would find that has 3 different class 2s. The problem that we face is that we really sometimes want to get to this one, because I want to set this attribute at the same time that I've added this class 2. So in order to do that, we need to sort of do this work again to find out where the correct link object is. And that has been a hassle. Let's see how I would do it the old way. I would need to have a separate operator. Yeah, and I can't do that because I'm in OCL. No, I'm in action. So a second operator, and I sort of want to I want to know which class 2 I'm talking about. So I need to have that in a variable somehow, temporary variable like this, in. And then I would add the C2 instead. So now I at least know which C2 it is I'm looking for. And then I could sort of, instead of going to the class 2s, I would go to the link objects for class 2s and try to select this. And a loop variable I would call just X. So these are different link objects for the class 2s, but I want a particular one, namely the one that points to class 2 equals C2. And now I know that will only be one, so I can safely do first to get to a object instead of a list, and then I can set the attribute 1, 2, whatever. And so that's an annoying construct, that it's so complex to do something that's so easy on the diagram. So let's see what happens when I do this. Yeah, now the last one, the last statement ended in this assignment, but if I were to look for link classes and search on those, I see that yeah, now I'm a bit stumped because I thought that we should have a, so I'm gonna add a C2, let's see. I'm gonna add an expression. C2s. I didn't even manage to get it correct, class 2s. Let's see if I'm gonna run it again. And I'm gonna end with showing this. Yeah, so there I have whatever, but select dum. Not sure what I'm doing wrong here, but so the link class for class 2 first, that's a collection of the link class. I'm getting the first one, setting the attribute to whatever. Lars, do you see what I'm doing wrong?
No, I don't. Then I would have spoken out.
At least now looks like this one has whatever one, and this is the link class. So let's see, this is the link class. Have a seeker, search. Yeah, now I have some. Does it work now? I'm not sure.
But you used the seeker.
Yeah,
the seeker
yeah.
used persistence.
Correct.
You hadn't saved it.
No.
That was the problem.
So the seeker, as soon as I've persistence mapping on, and I have XML now, and then the search will try to look in the file, and since I hadn't saved it, it didn't show up that way. So that's the old way how to address this thing, and we didn't particularly like it. So been scratching my head on how to address it. What's the best way to actually handle something like this? And so then we came up with a slightly different approach that really isn't that violating on anything. It's called add return index of 0. So that's a new operator from today. So instead of just doing add, I'm doing add and getting back the index of where this will end up, and they will follow. So the if this particular object class 1 is number 5, its corresponding link class will also be number 5 in the role, in the link row. So using that instead, and creating a class to create, I get a integer back, and that integer I can use in let's see, what's I would prefer to
when you have when you do it with using class 1 all instances first to get the object you're working on.
Yeah, so I guess
Yeah, that's better.
like this. So now I know that this is the C1 that I'm gonna add a new class 2 on, and as I have the C1, I know that there's an let's see, what's the link objects for class 2s. In that I can do the @0, so the 0 behind both this one and this one clarifies that they are 0 based. So the first one is 0, and if there are no hits on an index of 0 operator, the result will be -1, just as it's normally done in both Pascal, Delphi and C#. So because OCL normally is 1 based, and it's a bit confusing. So the 0 operators are the ones that I prefer to use, and I suggest that those are the ones that gonna make it to the future. So this is a indexer of this list, and I can send in then the integer return from this, and now I actually am in the context of my link object then. So I can do the attribute 1 assign whatever 2. So that's a more convenient way than needing to search for the class 2. Now I have the place where it ended up, and I can use that place in the link role name and get just that particular link role object and access its attribute and assign its value. Save that and search, so I get the same effect. So that's a small change for man, but a giant change for...
I have to ask, Hans, though, did you pick this index method for some particular reason, or because I think we have talked about this at like add return link object.
Yeah, but we don't want to break a lot of adds, so there had to be a new operator, and if we were to introduce a add return link object, that one would only work on link rows. So whenever you were to change something, then the typing would be different, and that would be giving it a bit of thought back and forth. I came to the conclusion that the most generic idea is to just be able to return the integer back of the position, because then it's useful for any kind of association, and won't be extremely specific. It's a generic thing to add and get the index back.
Okay.
So normally when the add operator just gives back the list, the extended list, and that might be good for some reasons, but I don't think we use that very much anyway. But this operator just hands back the index.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like a lot of your constructors you're doing in actions, not in code.
So as soon as there's something that's going to change data, it's in action language. Yeah, not in code, you said. Yes, so
Right.
at this point I was also in MDriven Designer, but that's true. The last couple of years, maybe the 4 or 5 last years, almost everything is moved into OCL action language instead of C#. And the reason...
Making it declarative, I assume, as opposed to iterative.
Yeah. So there's a bit of more... it's might be a bit more thinking to get this one line going, but the one line is easier to maintain and clearer to what it does than the same amount of code. It's also more accessible, and as we do it in code, we get the ability to right click and see where something is used and find the action where it's used. And of course you can get that in code as well, doing the find references, but this way we get the whole type check when we save and everything like that. So
if you have an operator for the class, let's say you've got some kind of a refresh operator, my typical construction code would typically be to create the new instance and then oftentimes, refresh that new instance to populate its values through whatever code or calculations happen. So can you call an operator inside here or not?
Yeah. So
frankly, it's probably only about half and half. A lot of times my constructors are just simply setting up the new class and might give them a default name or something, and that's about it. Builds the associations, whatever, right? But sometimes you call some kind of a refresh function that, populates your attributes with what you need.
Yeah. So, and there's a possibility to do your own constructors if you want to send in data as parameters. But if there's like initiations you need to have done, you can also look at the, let's see, on create, which is just a naming pattern. So if we have a method called onCreate, that will be called whenever an object is created. And we have these additional operators that work that way: on update, on delete, and on state change.
Yeah. Setting a date or time value is a great example of that. Or the other thing I probably do often is associate a user with the new object.
Yeah. So typically for on update is that we look at the logged in user and set a string property that we have on the superclass of everything. So yeah, a superclass of everything would look like this: superclass, and has a maybe a user name, and then of course I can drag on the generalization tool to put it on everything, but that would be a lot of work. So I can set it on the package instead and say default superclass. I want this superclass to be the default superclass. Now that's the superclass of everything. So if I reread the model and search for my things, I see there's a username as
well. A couple of things here also. Just when you mention superclass, usually we have that client mapped. So that it's the attributes and stuff for that class is pushed into the tables of the subclasses. You don't have a separate table
Yeah.
for that.
So
Because it's usually much easier to access your data in a constructive way in the database if you have them together.
Like an abstract class then.
Yeah, you could say that.
yeah, yeah,
We
probably
usually
would
mark
mark it
also.
as abstract, like so. And what Lars said is the table mapping. Normally, classes have their own tables, but that's not that opportune when there's this superclass, because then it would need this central point, and every join that we do or every fetch that we do need to join this single table. Then it's much better to child map this superclass. And what that means for the OR mapping is that this doesn't really exist, so you can't really ask questions on superclass. Well, you can, but it's not recommended. And instead, this property is expanded out to everything else. Of course, type-wise, everything will be a superclass as well, so it works just as you want in memory. But this is a thing for how it's stored, and a practical thing for how it's stored.
And that's a one-to-one association, I'm assuming.
So it's not really a cardinality thing, but as we say child map, how many classes you got, this will all the tables in the database will get the properties available on the superclass.
But there won't be many. It would have superclass 1 through n.
No. So as generalization in our world of object orientation is only one parent. So it's not like C++ where you can get these diamonds and then start to cry a week later. So
one point maybe to, I think you have lost track of the years, Hans. I think we haven't really used C# in our modeling in the general building of applications for at least 10 years. And I want to make that point so that you know that this is mature. It's not like you're going to find things that just you can't do with EL and OCL and subclasses and parent mapping and constructors and updating before this and having side effects when you save. You can update stuff, and it's at least building for 10 years and it's still holding.
Yeah, so usually we do C# only when there's odd cases, rand cases. So one of the things I did last maybe was integrating a new bank transaction thing where the key code was really complex with AES crypto things that we didn't have exposed. So then I simply added a method and left the OCL blank and generate code, then leaves me a stub, and I can fill in whatever C# code I need there.
So in ECO3, that would be called derived in code. I can't remember the exact term, but
yeah.
And I use that a lot. That problem I gave you earlier today, I was thinking maybe better done to be derived in code, but maybe in the MDriven world, it's in action language.
Yeah. So I think it's fine to derive it in OCL. One thing to know about derived attributes is that it's very efficient. One might think that it's worse than doing it in a method or something like that, but it's quite the contrary, because since it's cached, and if you
well, it's also it's not computed unless it's needed.
Exactly. The first time you ask for it, it will be computed. And also, if you use it for view models, etc., we sort of look into derived things and expand them in order to fetch efficiently, even if you do stuff not obvious if you in the derived thing go astray and do things on the side.
So, and I have a lot of derived attributes that are really just for UI. Like, and it may be hacky in your world, I don't know. But so a great example is for a lot of my filters, I use a label, and when the user clicks on it, I change the attribute, for a Boolean in my class. But then I have a listener that sees that and we have a back color for that label that then changes color. And you can have in the setter, you can, let's say you want it mutually exclusive, you can make it so that the other siblings are then set to false or something. But that's all model code, and more of that has become model code, but there's a lot of derived attributes and OCL
I think
that are making it happen.
As I understand your situation, you very much use the ideas of view model, but you use it by introducing transient classes with derived attributes.
A lot of that.
What the view model is basically transient facades with a lot of derived stuff. So we're not too far off each other at all. But what we want to do with the view models is that we want to make a distinction between what are the perspectives of the information versus what is the information. So
well, and that's what I was about to say in different terms is part of the beauty of using a transient class is it becomes transactional, and you give your user a sandbox to work in, and you can move that transaction forward or backwards depending on what the user does and whether they comply to your rules.
Yeah, so correct, and that's a good thing, and we often end up doing more model classes than what's actually needed for the end result, as we model the process to get to the end result, because that's good also.
The trick is
they don't necessarily need to be transient; they might be persistent as well. Because if the lights goes out or the user needs to go to lunch or something, everything is sort of in process, and you can build on it after lunch or the next day, or so that's a good way to think about it. I think we are moving away from the old days where information systems focused on the result, and now we're much more focused on the process on getting a result. So it's not like a archive cabinet where you're supposed to file finished stuff like the old SAP systems. You're supposed to know what the PO values are, and once you know, you fill in the PO. But how do you know? Well, you probably used Excel. So the thing is that the work environment should be that we catch all the information the user needs to do to get the work done, because then we have all the data. We know where the process is slow, we know where it's fast, we know where there's a problem, and all the side data that goes into a decision is tracked, and so that's really good for compliance and for making sure that there's precision in the workforce.
Yeah, and it does two things. One, in the old days, a lot of that workflow data entry business logic existed in the Windows controls, even if it's as simple as this can only be true or false, right? That used to be enforced by the checkbox control, right? That's not really where that should be enforced. But the other thing you can do is, as you're guiding your user, you can give them visual cues, like if something is wrong, you make it red. If it's correct, you make it green. And so you can help the user get from A to B by, again, keeping that business logic in your model, but making it visual.
Yeah.
I mean, it's what your iPhone does, right? If you get on your phone and you're filling out a web form, if you put something in wrong, it somehow shows you in an obvious way that you're wrong.
Yeah.
The view model has most of these features built in, so you can build model constraints, rules, right? And then you can also build view model rules, and then you can tell the view model where to expose them, which to use and which ones to expose, and link them up to controls that you want to give color when one rule is broken. And we usually say that don't ever prevent users from entering data, instead prevent them from moving on and use that data. So that's much more nice to them. And then so we have more rules.
Well, it's explicit. You're not making, it's not a mystery what you're expecting, because that's a common programming fault we do, is we assume certain things, but there's no way the user knows unless they know the code or the problem space. And then it's also immediate, right? Because if you change colors, you don't have to wait till you hit the process button and go, you made all these mistakes. You see it instantly.
Yeah. So let's say that I just pressed the button to create the auto forms here, and I got the auto form for class 1. So there's an attribute 1. And there's also a way to do the styles in model with this sim, we call it, styles in model. So I'm going to do a new style, and I'm going to target the component, the whole component. And the whole component should get a fill color. But I don't have any color, so I'm going to add a color. I'm going to make it red. And like that, now I can use that fill color on the component. So this style is named style, new style 1. And I can have a style expression. So this is an expression. So if self dot attribute 1 equals Hans. Then I'm gonna put out new style 1, and if it isn't, I'm gonna leave it black. So saving that and pressing play on the prototyper and finding a class 1 and showing class 1 and writing Hans, it's red.
There are other ways to trigger this. Yes, Damien, I think it was Damien at least. You started we talked about classes and transient classes. And I would say that, it's called view model class and view model classes and subclasses for a reason. Yeah. It's like a projection into a new dynamic type or dynamic class. And you can even turn on that code gen thing, and then you will actually get code out of your view models. So you could see them as dynamically typed classes that are created out of thin air when you need them, and then you use them as facades for a transformation to the more structured, you could call it model classes or business classes. So we would say that the model, the big model, is probably using a lot of words that are specific to the business, and then the view models are composites of dynamically typed things that is needed for the user interface.
Yeah, so this would correspond to the attributes in a transient class, and of course they are derived because they are just expressions. So it's fairly similar. And since everything is transactional in memory, if the user chooses to, if the user made changes in multiple steps, the user could choose to undo or revert everything in steps. So that's more or less the same without the need to declare the transient classes. I'm not saying that it's wrong, and we sometimes do that as well for when the transformation from the real information stored in the database is really complex and detailed and multi-step. Then we often end up turning it into transient classes before presenting stuff. But then we use the view models for presenting the transient classes. So we never leave the view models. It's really a fantastic versatile tool once you swallow the pill.
I think, I don't know, at least a few dozen times I think I've added a transient class as a backbone of a wizard. It's like, yeah, let's make a wizard. So I have a wizard as a transient class, and then I have views that I can move in between, and that all references. And it's very helpful to have this thing, and then I point to the thing. So a user which is selecting something and building up like through a wizard, they point to things in that through that thing and through the view model. Instead of having variables in the view model, which I use this transient class. But then usually at the end I turn it into a persistent class, because then I realize, it's kind of neat, this thing that the wizard can be restarted the next time the user logs in. And then I usually end up maybe even to have like either the user object points to one single one, like a singleton for that user, and then I add a button on the first screen. I've done in several cases. Or when you if that link is not empty, you say, hey, you have left unfinished things, and you click on it, and then you show it again. And because you realize, like, but why do I try to keep it in memory? That was just a thing you had to do when you were using code, and it was an effort to store stuff in the database, but now it's completely effortless. So why not just...
You're scared of garbage in the database is what it really comes down to. But you're right, and I've been thinking about this because I do that very frequently. A wizard that is a transient class, maybe has some sub-transient classes to it. User does stuff. When they're done, poof, everything's pushed into the persistent world. But yes, if they quit halfway, then they're back at the beginning, and there's no good reason for that.
Yeah. Cool. We didn't really get into the other idea that Eric came with just today, but we'll save that for another day. I think it's still very valid.
Hey, can I just ask one real quick question? I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but the on the association side, and is the reason that you can't have association classes on derived associations? Is it because it basically would violate the rule about side effects?
Yes, I would say so. So, and also when you do derived associations, you need to declare both ends, and usually you just declare one end because you you need an expression on both ends, and that's really the same as two different associations going one way each. And if the derivation results in 5 on the other end, then there should be sort of 5 link clauses created, and that would break the rule of immutability to that there are no side effects when navigating things or changing. It depends on what the expression is really, but it could be time-based. But there will always be something that triggers the resulting rippling effect of creation. But that's true. We do not allow that kind of large side effects on derivations currently.
Okay.
What I've done in several cases with this is that but we do have derived settable attributes. And for example, if you pick something or you set something, that is actually something you can have other effects of. And then I've done that. I've actually create transient objects as a side effect of actual data change.
Yeah, so that's a good use of the derived settable, because that's an action whenever you want to, and you can even have those on association ends, derived settable association ends, and when you assign things, you can have any amount of side effects you see fit to create other data and stuff.
Okay, I didn't realize you could do that with a settable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
You
you're free
can
to
have any side effect on them, and it's actually, when you think about it, it's usually when that happens that you actually want the thing to happen, because then you're actually in that exact moment, because then you want to use that data somehow, and because then the UI is subscribed, the data that you have like created then because of some rule will then be automatically. So you could have, I've done that you have, for example, several different things that you affect, and then all of them basically call this update the link, the group of things that you want to have as a result. And then you don't waste any CPU cycles, and you get it spot on when you want it to happen. To have a look at that.
Oh, well, thank you.
So I have 2 months left of ECO3, and I am firmly committed to it's done by the end of the year. So this stuff's exciting, and I can't tell you how excited I am to not have a tool that breaks all the time. It's going to be really cool. But watch out, because I'm going to be
yeah.
I'm going to be asking a lot of stupid questions.
At least you have support if it were to break, but we're pretty stable.
Yeah, well, ECO3. The problem with ECO3 is I've pushed its limits. It's got its challenges because it's older .NET, but it's really bigger challenges that the Borland Development Studio has memory leaks that with a model my size just breaks all the time, and then the code generation I think is the same thing. I give it too much data, and it just sometimes spits out crap, but it's very unsettling when you're using a tool like that.
Yeah.
But I know most of its quirks, but it'll sure be nice to get rid of those, because like I was telling
like
Hans,
working with murderers or something. You never feel secure.
Which one's got the weapon, right? That's right.
Okay, we need to finish up. Thank you very much for tonight, and hope to see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Hans.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.